All right, here we go. Welcome everybody to another Friday community demo sync. I think we have a couple of really good demos from Ravant here today. I think Jimmy, if he ends up joining us this morning, is going to have a couple of things to cover. James, I'm sure you'll have something to talk about, maybe not. Nope.
This time, I think there's so much cool stuff to demo that I'll hang back.
Oh, Zetlin hanging back.
Imagine that.
And then we'll kind of wrap there, take any questions or comments from anybody on the call, and then we'll keep it moving. So Ravant, maybe you want to start us off. Or do you need to plug in? Or
Okay. So the first, can you hear me? Is it through this one or laptop?
Yeah, everyone should be
Okay.
able to hear you.
Okay. So the first one is about So the first one was about writing a Webpack plugin, using actually the Webpack HTML plugin and also writing a couple other plugins around it to get SSR for Venia. So the problem we had was, it's not a problem statement. Whatever we had in the past was compiling at runtime, like all the HTML files and everything were compiled using Upward at runtime. So it was a little sluggy at times. It was the first paint was actually taking longer, and Zetlin actually had the plan of using Webpack HTML plugin, and that's what we did with this particular PR. If we look at the benefits we were getting out of it, Zetlin had a couple of tests posted. These were through the Webpack test, web test website. It did testing on desktop and also on devices. Where did you?
I think I saw it.
I think so at the time.
Yeah, that was for images, I guess. This was from me.
No, but there's an image.
Yeah.
So the thing about this result is that it ran on a desktop site.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I mean, remember for the HTML Webpack plugin, which is showing right now,
Yes.
it's fine to do desktop. So the web page test results that you're thinking of are in the other.
Yeah, actually, yes. So if you compare this against the one which we have in develop, the first byte we got an A here, but when you look this up, same in the develop branch as of today, it's actually an F. We could do that, and I guess I have a screenshot already ready for that. I remember. Yes. This particular one, if you look at the performance-wise, the left is actually with the changes, and the right is actually without the changes. This is develop branch. So this is a huge performance boost from 66 to 95. But then you could see the best practices, and like SEO is kind of a hurt at this point. But then we'll get it back. Zetlin, if you want to add something on like the meta tags and stuff.
I can mention that the SSR approach here of doing a static HTML page for all pages is currently the best practice used by many PWA implementations that are very high performance and recommended by PWA thought leaders. What else to say? The developer relations advocates at Google, certainly. And there are cases where we do want to do some data or content in the server-side render for bots and machines that aren't going to render the full app. But most search engines do render the full app. So this covers most use cases. The previous approach did render full content for most pages using a lot of upward logic, but it was pretty slow because of a number of sequential calls that it had to make to get all of that data. The GraphQL API is going to speed up, so that would be helped certainly. But in general, we found that the performance benefits of switching to full client-side rendering outweigh the costs of waiting for the data on the client side. But we have removed some functionality with this. It no longer does the full content server-side render. Since we know that things like the Facebook and Slack link bot are going to need that server-side rendering, we're going to bring it back. We're going to bring it back differently using extension functionality with new extension APIs, and that SSR will only kick in when it detects that the request is not coming from a regular phone, when it's coming from a bot. That's coming later. For now, we needed to simplify, so people will have questions about SSR, and that's the answer.
Is the SSR coming from the server-side dynamic, or are you generating the static HTML out of?
Originally, it was server-side dynamic, but now
it's a static HTML.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, if you look at the test, this is the index.html, like minified HTML file that's downloaded.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually created at compile time. Look at. I'll just delete this file, this folder, just to show that it is created. So this one is at compile time. So it actually goes to the Magento backend server, fetches the media URL that is actually at that point of time that's needed to download all the media files, inserts that into the HTML file. So at this point, it says index.html is actually the entry point, and that's created. If you look at index.html,
you get a static HTML.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a need for a server? Could you deploy this into an AWS bucket and serve static files?
Yeah, potentially. That falls under the category of potential deployment optimizations.
Mm-hmm.
The philosophy of our PWA is that all that stuff should be sort of opaque to the implementer of the front end.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what Upward is for, is to say this is how the server has to respond. And it doesn't matter whether that happens at runtime, which it currently does using the Upward servers, or whether it happens at deploy time, where you read that file and you configure the static stuff to be deployed on CDN and the proxies to be handled via the reverse proxy to Varnish. So yeah, it can be deployed to a really, really simple static CDN path.
You talk about improvement, of course, if you go static HTML, of course there's going to be performance improvement.
Yeah.
Couldn't you get that performance back from the server side if it's cached? Like if Upward services are cached in the server?
It can. So the GraphQL API is going to improve, and yeah, caching will help. But right now, it's not there.
Mm-hmm.
And we do know that even for the projects that have really, really fast backends and do aggressive caching, many of them do choose not to do any server-side rendering anyway. Just to simplify things, because the point of the PWA is to get to a quick first paint.
Yeah.
And usually, if you do it right, the client-side only approach can get you there.
So this is the base template that the Webpack HTML plugin is going to use. There are certain places where we have mentioned template structures, but we haven't given the data yet because this is dynamic at the compile time. So if you look at the Magento backend URL, the store name and stuff.
Does this replace the handlebar templates?
Sorry?
Is this a replacement to the handlebar templates, or is it different?
Handlebar templates?
Yeah,
Templates?
that's their mustache templates there.
Oh,
Handlebars,
yes.
Handlebars is the
I'm sorry, mustache.
yeah. I understand. The mustache is the very simple.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, for now it is.
Okay.
We may still use templates of that kind at build time, and in the future, the SSR that we need to do for the search marketing bots and the link bots will probably use that upward functionality. Just right now, it's been pulled out.
Okay.
Later, that will come.
So maybe you could use that. So what happens with Webpack is you can write your own loaders. They were loaders for, I guess the ones you said, like HBL. Are those the files? Yeah. So for those, there are loaders already given. Maybe I guess if I can find something for Mustache, maybe you can use those as well. But for now, we are actually going with a generic template.html file, which will be served even if you are in the category of products page. So if you look at the Webpack config, it's pretty similar except for these set of lines. We are taking the plugins that we already had in the past that the configure Webpack function is going to return, and then we are adding on top of it. The first one we are adding is the store name, which you can use anywhere in your code because it's going to be invoked into the global while the compile is being done. So if you look at store name being used inside HTML, and you can actually use that in app.js as well. You can just call it store name. You don't need to know where it is actually coming from as probably the last guy, but as a developer, you could know that it's actually from the Webpack. And this is the new plugin we have written, the media plugin. This all it does is asynchronously at compile time. It actually goes to the GraphQL server, which is at the Magento backend URL, and tries to get the secure media base URL.
Okay.
It is subject to change. Most often probably it wouldn't, but it's subject to change, and that's the reason why at compile time, just once when you're creating that one, we are going and getting that back. This is for now. There is one more PR of mine that's ready, which is going to clean up this particular plugin to make it generic. So in the future, you can have just call it like async plugin and then add your own fetchers to it. Maybe if you want to fetch the store name or you want to fetch copyright information or anything that you would want to put into the template.
Yeah, and we ultimately want to put this into BuildPack as part of the configure Webpack facade, since it's so common that people are going to want to query the schema and get particular text data out of it. Store config is a great example. We should just be able to hard code the store name into the final build, just for simplicity's sake.
Yeah, so this is actually the one that I was working on. So it's actually called the async Webpack plugin. You give it the fetcher. So there's a specific syntax that you would want to use. If you look at the async plugin, all it does is takes the callback at constructor time and then it just puts that into a try catch because it doesn't want to cancel out the whole Webpack process just because this particular callback is like faulty. And all it does is calls that callback function. That's it, like an asynchronous function, that promise. So you could, as a developer, you could add how many other plugins as you want. Just you have to give a new fetcher to it. With that, the performance is high because the first content paint is ready because we already have the HTML file. Well, in the previous case, since it was at compile at runtime, it was a 4-second delay. And that's the only reason why the performance is actually hurtful, these two. This is one of the demos that I had, and the other one is the images, responsive images.
Any questions from anybody on the line first on the first demo here?
Yeah, this is a pretty big change. It's nice and clean looking. The code change looks like it's removing a lot of code, and that's because it is. But don't be fooled, it's a big change. And a good change. I'm really happy about it. I guess it's definitely the way forward. And this is a lot more similar to the way that other React projects run. You know, I mean, we don't want to deviate from the way that a normal React app or a Create React app, something you find in, you know, Google or Medium, the way that it runs. It's easier for people to learn that way. We did Upward because of specific needs that happen in our ecosystem where there's different deployment targets. You can't just push to Firebase, et cetera. It's got to run with Magento. But we found a way to make it closer to the way a regular React app runs and still work for Magento, and that is a great win. So thank you very much.
Your idea. Okay. So no questions on that.
I think doesn't look like it, so we'll just
Okay.
we'll keep it moving.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next one is refactoring these image tags that we have around in our project to use the source set and sizes for optimization. But this, yeah, Zetlin had a couple of screenshots posted. Let's first look at those and I'll try to explain what exactly is happening. So in this one, we are previously, before this PR, none of the images had any source set. So all you had to define in your code itself, like what is the width and height of the images that you would want to download when this particular website is hit. So the problem was, irrespective of whether you are on a high resolution image screen or a small screen like a phone, or like a higher pixel density phone like a iPhone XS or something, same image was downloaded irrespective of whatever the environment is. So it will be performance intensive for smaller devices, because now you have to download a bigger file, which is going to eat up more memory, and then it's going to actually eat up your bandwidth of your network bandwidth as well. With this particular change, we are trying to use the source set, and because of that, sometimes it might happen that if you're on a higher pixel density, it will download a bigger image than the one that it used to in the past. And if you're on a smaller one, it will download a smaller pixel image. A simple example would be this.
Oh no!
Yeah, I moved to the Webpack thing, that's why it crashed.
Yeah.
Just give a second.
Our site can't be reached.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I think that was just muted.
Hot mic.
Hot mic. Yeah, so if you look at the previous develop implementation, we had given like 300 and 375 as the width and height for that image. This is in your code. This is compiled into the code. But now if we look at the example of what we have here, if you look at the responsive images, I'm going for a pixel density of 1. And if you look at this image, it is rendered at 489 pixels. Like it's actually eating up a space of 489 pixels of width, but it is downloading. I shouldn't be moving it then. It's downloading an image of 320 pixels. That's because that's actually the closest available one inside the source set. This is the whole source set that we are given, the whole source set attribute. And if we start compressing this image, and then probably change the device pixel ratio to 2 or something, something like a pixel 2 or pixel 3 has a device pixel ratio of 2. If you look at this image, even though it was only rendering at 199 width, or like close to 200 pixels width, it was still downloading 640 pixels worth of an image. That's because 200 pixels into 2, that's 400, and the closest one is around 400 pixels. It is needed to render this particular image, and the closest one available at that point of time is actually 640 pixels, and that's the reason why it has downloaded that big image. But now the benefit that the person or whoever is using, the user is having is he's going to have a very high quality image, even though his phone is actually smaller in size. His form factor is smaller in size, the device.
The multiple sizes, are they coming from the store, or is that generated by Webpack or?
We have that. We have that.
Good question.
defined.
Yeah, I tried to do that and didn't find a way to have multiple images from the store.
So so the store does have multiple images. There isn't a good API for it.
Okay.
And the general direction of Magento architecture is to move away from having the Magento platform do things like media management.
Mhm.
It does do it right now, and it's a nice system. You can create sizes of an image and assign roles to them, like thumbnail and feature.
Mhm.
But again, because those aren't present in the API yet, and because we don't want to rely on the Magento monolith for things that aren't commerce, we are going another direction. So instead of using those cached images, we are generating them on the fly. And we're having discussions with architecture about how to integrate that into the platform. But there's two ways it's done right now. The best one is if you have Magento Cloud, if you have Enterprise Cloud, especially the Pro Tier Cloud, and you have the Fastly I/O feature on it.
Mhm.
And Fastly I/O is routing all of your image requests through the Fastly CDN, and so you can use URL parameters to do Fastly image optimizations, which is public API. You can Google for it.
Mhm.
That's what we're doing here because the attached instance, I believe, unless I'm wrong, it does use Fastly I/O.
So Fastly does the
The
iteration.
compression.
Okay.
Yes, so
Nice.
Fastly is generating based on URL parameters, and Relance
Yeah.
code will actually auto-generate those URLs
So,
for each
yeah.
size. And then they get cached, so they're not always auto-generated.
Right, yeah.
When you don't have Fastly I/O, the PWA Studio server that runs Upward.js has its own built-in onboard image middleware that simulates the exact same API.
So right now we just defined like a bunch of sizes right now, and so we only store the widths because the height ratio is always 4:5.
Mhm.
This is specific to Venia, and all we do is generate the source set using this particular image widths that we have, and also generate URL for each of those widths. All it does is like a mapping word on top of it and just joining them with a comma, and that's what source set.
That's a great update.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this particular one.
Yeah, sometimes it's actually it's going to be a little bit heavier of a payload because if you look at the current state, there are some places where some of this is my fault where the images are not properly sized according to the media queries.
Mhm.
Like sometimes you get really low resolution images at large
Yeah.
sizes. So
Our store is full of super huge images.
yeah.
Yeah, I've been looking for a way to
Well, yeah, one thing.
source it. So-
One thing we make sure not to do is the unresized image is the very last resort fallback.
Mhm.
So we want it to never show up because those things are gigantic.
Yeah.
But we can resize those images up to very, very large sizes. And when you do the resize, it's not just changing the size, but it's also changing the compression ratio and where the browser supports it, it's actually rendering WebP images.
So if you look at the current implementation of Develop, I'm going with the device pixel ratio of 2. And still, if you look at the image, it's actually pixelated. It's not clear. If you look at the newly implemented one, the images are like super sharp. And that's what you want your users to have, like a better experience with the products. So it depends completely. Like we don't want to maintain all these logics. So since we already have source set, then we are just utilizing it. Yeah, so there might be a small bundle size increase. That's because now it has more options to use. It's going to download a higher resolution, given the environment around it, compared to the previous one. Irrespective of anything, it's going to download the exact same image. That's why the bundle size might be big, but then the experience is going to be richer.
Yeah.
Any questions on it?
Any questions on the line?
I don't know.
Prevalent,
Yeah,
can you think of a reason why we would ever switch from images with source sets to pictures with sources?
Different file types. that's something you can't achieve with
Yeah.
SourceSet. If you have WebP images, PNG, and JPEGs, for the same exact image, you have different versions of it. Then you could have picture. Inside the picture, you can have source tags. It's like a if-else case. If the first one works, it's going to pick it up. If not, second one, if not third one. So it's in the exact same order. You could define that if the JPEG is available and that particular device supports JPEG, just download it. Or WebP or something. I guess WebP is the best standard for.
It depends. WebP is great. Some browsers don't support it. Fortunately,
Yeah.
we use regular old HTTP accept encodings, so that when you ask the browser, when the browser asks for an image, it says what image types it can parse, and the server will do content negotiation and get it the right one.
So that's this. And there was one thing I actually wanted to work on. I'm not sure if you.
I want to talk about it. It's a community sync.
Yeah. So if we have seen in multiple websites out there, they have a shimmer that they show. Like if the flow kind of thing. Like,
Yep, skeleton, page skeleton.
oh, it's called a skeleton. Okay.
Spooky.
Yeah. So we could have it as a placeholder whenever the image is actually being downloaded, because sometimes it might happen that you want to download a bigger image, like 1,000 pixels.
There's
This is
a component
6
that you can look at that does that. It has a skeleton in the background, and then when the image loads, it actually blurs it in.
Yeah. Till the image, it's like a placeholder till the image is being loaded.
And the placeholder actually respects the ratio of the image.
Oh, that's
So it keeps the size.
yes, no more pieces.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. And that was something I had plans of, but I don't know if it's good Wi-Fi that we have here. I never had because it was loading like really fast, even if I had throttling on it. But that's it. Any questions?
So we have a shorter meeting today due to a conflict, but Jimmy, I see you on the line. I know you wanted to kind of talk about some things that are coming up in the next couple of weeks. Maybe in a minute or less, if you want to give a sneak peek, like next time on Community Sync Demo.
Yeah, we can just briefly share it real quick. Let's see. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Sure.
Cool. So Stephen and I are hard at work on Peregrine. We're trying to make Peregrine actually complete here in the next few months. So one of the things we showed off a couple weeks ago was some work on the left drawer, where we had made application state like user and the drawer and catalog available via context. So I have a PR here that when the tests are fixed, we're gonna get merged pretty quickly here to make application state available not just within the navigation but across the whole app. So we go ahead and look at something like pull up something like application context. Basically, what this is it's a component that's connected to Redux and pulls the state out of Redux as well as the actions that we have and makes them available via a context provider so that any component can simply use context with these context objects to get the Redux state without having to connect through a container component and do a map state to props or map dispatch to props. So at any level of the component, you can, at any level of the tree, you can use context to get the Redux state you need. And this doesn't come with a performance cost like Connect does because of the subscriptions. So you can do this as many times as you need to, and totally change up your component architecture. Rather than, this should help avoid passing a lot of props from high up connected components down to lower ones. You can just skip straight to what you need. So we're going to see that pretty soon. And the other thing worth talking about is we did get some new GraphQL coverage that we noticed right before we merged the left drawer work. So as a result, when you're navigating through the menu now, we're not going to have that extra step where when you get into a category, we'll say like all pants and shorts or all script. These will just be direct links to the categories now when they are in fact a leaf. And so you can distinguish between, in your own apps, you can distinguish between branches and leaves however you want with styling, because they're different components. But basically at this point, we've fully exposed all the categories in the tree and made the navigation a lot snappier as a result. And the navigation is using these new slices of context that are available.
Awesome. So great sneak peek from Jimmy on upcoming Peregrine improvements. Any other questions? I think we're just a little bit over time, but no big deal. All important things.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks everybody for joining. Smash that subscribe. Onwards and upwards. There we go. Yay. Have a great weekend. See you guys.
All right. See you guys.